Still preparing live stream.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. We'll get started in about 2 minutes. All right, hey everyone, welcome. I'm Jeff and I head up product marketing at Mixpanel, and I'm here with my colleague Adam Kinney, a principal product manager also at Mixpanel. We're here to have a conversation about a topic that's on a lot of companies' minds: product analytics, business intelligence, and what the difference is. And we're looking forward to getting any questions you have, so feel free to drop them in the comment feed for LinkedIn, Twitter, or wherever you're tuning in, and then we'll save time at the end to get to them. So, okay, before we get into that, I want to share a quick little interesting stat on the topic, and then we'll let Adam introduce himself here. So Mixpanel did a market research survey of over 900 folks on product development teams, product managers, engineers, product analysts, and so on. And one of the things we found was that 82% of these people had either used or known about at their company business intelligence. At the same time, Mixpanel has tens of thousands of customers. So the question is, why is that? How are both of these trends happening? Both tools, they help you make charts and analyze data, right? Well, not quite that simple. So to get this conversation going, Adam, you're gonna help us unpack this. Before we do, I think it would be really useful to the audience to know a little bit about your background. You spent a lot of years in the data space working with the data stack.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning. Like Jeff said, I'm Adam Kinney. I've been working in analytics and data science in one way or another for 15 years now. I started out my career in 2005 at Google. I was at Google as we didn't have a thing called data science back then, but I was working as a quant in Google, working on Google search engine for about 5.5 years. Then in 2010, I jumped over to Twitter. I worked as one of the first, people actually like digging into user data and trying to understand all these kinds of product questions and user growth questions at Twitter, and then eventually grew the data science team up there, and then finally was the head of the analytics team at Twitter. And then in 2014, I did something totally different. I decided to jump overseas to live in Oslo, Norway. I worked for a company called Schibsted Media Group there. Led a team that was distributed kind of all around Europe, and Schibsted's a very global company, and so I got exposure to the way these companies are working with analytics and data science and trying to answer these kind of product, user behavior questions all around the world. And then in like 2 years ago, basically, I jumped back over to the United States, back to San Francisco. I've been working at Mixpanel ever since, and it's been really interesting because instead of just trying to figure out how to answer these questions for one company and one set of users, now we think about how to answer those questions for anybody, all of our customers. So it's been a pretty interesting trip so far.
Great. Norway's on the bucket list, so I'm jealous you get to spend some time there, Adam.
Beautiful country.
So let's get into this. I've got a couple questions for you, then we'll go to the audience. The first one I have is about business intelligence. Last year, I think we all saw that Tableau was acquired by Tableau was acquired by Salesforce for $17 billion, correction. And then Looker was acquired by Google for $2.6 billion. And then there's also a bunch of other products in the space like Mode, Domo, Power BI, Chartio, some really great tools. So there's clearly a lot of demand for what these products do. I was hoping you could just set the stage and like tell us what it is that these products are so strong at, and then how it compares to a dedicated product analytics solution, something like a Mixpanel.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's interesting. Like I've kind of watched the growth of business intelligence as a product category for a number of years now. And you know what business intelligence is really great at is any business is just incredibly complex. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's extremely difficult to keep everybody on the same page about like what are our goals, how are we doing against our goals, how are things going, like what's the base set of facts that we all need to know and share in that knowledge around the company. So BI is really great at, and you know, especially combined with a data warehouse, you can condense all of that complexity down to like, here are the KPIs, here are the metrics we're all going to look at and share, and we're all going to try to influence these metrics and move them in the right direction. So BI is really about like taking something that is incredibly complex, which is any kind of business, and then making it kind of manageable so that everybody shares the same facts. Mixpanel is a different kind of tool that's meant to solve a different kind of problem. So we're not the same as business intelligence at all. What we try to do is help EPD teams, so that's engineering, product, and design, you know, all the folks in a company who are actually developing the product, trying to make it work better and better for users over time, trying to grow the user base. What we do is try to make it really easy to go deep and answer all of the questions that you have in a self-serve kind of way. So you're not waiting on the data team to answer the question. You're not waiting on the data scientists who have their own things to do to answer the question. You're able to just go and get the answers and go as deep as you want to go.
Perfect. That's really helpful. So to go back to one of your points, Adam, you mentioned how the strength of a business intelligence tool is all around the visualization. You can make some incredible things in like a Tableau, for example. At the same time, they're not used for collecting the data. They don't clean the data. And then from a storage perspective, that's not what they really do either. And so to do all that, you need other tools. You mentioned a data warehouse is one, and then you need a lot of really smart people who are great with data to make it happen. So going back to some of the market trends, just this September, Snowflake, data warehouse company, largest software IPO in history is what I saw. And they were only founded 8 years ago in 2012. And that's like not that long ago. And I think you were still at Twitter, or even before you had joined Twitter at that time. So like a lot has changed. You guys were building your own stack. Snowflake wasn't even a thing. Could you just tell us about how you've seen the stack evolve? And then like part two, with the evolution, how has product analytics fit in perhaps a different way than it would have in the past?
Yeah, sure. So I think the best way to talk through this is to share a diagram here of the way this stack looks. And this is a super simplified diagram. So any data engineers that are watching this, you'll see like there's a lot of like really important stuff that isn't captured here, but this just gives you like the basic overview and a flavor for what's involved. So in a typical data stack, so you have these three phases where the first phase is you collect the data and then you transform it. You'll hear this term ETL tossed around sometimes. It's kind of like it comes from the database world from many years ago, but basically it's about transforming the data and then getting it into a storage solution, which is the second part of it. So we hear terms like data lake, which is basically like there's a distributed file system somewhere because this data is very large typically, and so it won't fit on one machine. So a distributed file system of some sort that just holds the data. A data warehouse is a more structured way to hold the data, and so that's where things like Snowflake are involved. In the analysis side, there's all kinds of actual applications you have for your data. So we touched on business intelligence. There's a host of different internal tools, and then there's machine learning and real-time applications. And when you think about the history of this thing, like as you said, like back when I was at Twitter, we had this really talented analytics infrastructure team. I'm sure that Twitter still does have an analytics infrastructure team, but we had one back then too. And at that time, you have your own data center. There were, AWS, I think maybe existed in a very primordial kind of form, but you had your own data center, or you leased space in a data center, and typically you would run on Hadoop, and so you would have these Hadoop clusters that would run, and that's how you would process the large amounts of data. And then at Twitter, for example, for a good chunk of time, we used Vertica for storing a lot of our data that we would, and then we had this internal tool that we called BirdBrain, because everything is named after birds at Twitter, and that would, that was built by just a really, really great team of data visualization engineers that could basically build from scratch an entire dashboard product. But that's how it was back then, because you basically had to do it yourself if you were going to get anything, because there just wasn't a lot out there. Now, the interesting thing that's happened in the intervening years is every single part of this stack has multiple different companies offering really good solutions to it. So, from collection and transformation, in collection, there's Segment, there's InParticle, there's Telium, there's many others. In the streaming layer, of course, kind of throughout all of this, you have different AWS and Google Cloud and Microsoft Azure. Of course, Snowflake, as you mentioned, is just huge right now in the data warehouse space. You also have BigQuery and Redshift as data warehouse solutions. In the BI part of things, Tableau and Looker, Power BI mode, there's all these great solutions for every single piece of this, and then in-house continues to be a big category in and of itself. And a lot of data engineering teams, when they're looking at how they want to build their stack, they decide that at any part of this they have very specialized needs, and it makes more sense to build than to buy. And so you just see a tremendous variety of different tools out here. The common denominator is interoperability. So you want to be able to plug in the best tool for the job at any single part of this stack. But that's the way that it's evolved. It's an extremely robust ecosystem at this point.
This is great. Thanks, Adam. So I got one last question for you, then we'll go back to the audience to see what they have to say and what's on their minds. So you're the PM for all of Mixpanel's data products, and you and your team recently released a product for connecting Mixpanel into this stack that you're showing right here, and it's called Cloud Import. Could you share with the audience a little bit about why it's useful, why would you want it, and then a little bit on the speeds and feeds and how it works and how you could get set up?
Yeah, sure. So the context is that Mixpanel has for most of its history, kind of operated across this data stack. So Mixpanel has SDKs that you can use to track data. We then store the data. We do all the transformations that are needed, and then we have a purpose-built UI that it's made for product teams to answer the questions and that they need to answer and go deep. And what's really great about that is, because we focus just on the product side, it allows us to have a very standardized data format It allows us to have a query engine that runs really fast over that data, and then it allows us to have that UI that's meant to answer specifically the questions that product teams have. So one thing that has been kind of difficult for some of our customers is that if you have a stack like what I'm showing here, Mixpanel kind of doesn't fit into that world very neatly. And Cloud Import is our solution to enable you to do that. So the way it works is that you have, what our category is self-serve product analytics. That's what Mixpanel does. And so you can see in the bottom right there that we basically sit parallel with all the other applications of data. Instead of spanning from collection all the way to answering questions for product teams, we can now sit right there parallel to like a business intelligence tool or machine learning applications, like whatever you're doing with your data. And the way we do that is we take data directly from a data lake or a data warehouse. So long, basically like all the event data that you would want to send to Mixpanel, all of the user profile data and other kinds of dimensions and things that you might want to add as lookup tables, you can get into Mixpanel from your data warehouse. Now, the thing that the way this actually works is we have we have an ability to basically pull a storage bucket. So in a data lake, for example, you're typically going to see data being stored in Amazon S3 or Google Cloud Storage, for example. And so the way it works is the data that you're already collecting, the data that you trust the quality because you have your data engineering team like focused on that and making sure that it's great. You can just put that data into an S3 bucket or a Google Cloud Storage bucket and grant Mixpanel permissions for it. And then we pull the bucket basically like every 15 minutes and we pick up any new data that's there. It saves you a lot of the trouble of trying to, stream data in through an ingestion API or something like that. Like basically you just drop the data in the bucket, you configure us to pick it up, and then, you don't have to worry about it anymore. All you got to do is just as new data comes in, you copy it over to that bucket on the schedule that makes the most sense for you.
It's really helpful, Adam. So let's go to some questions from the audience because I think they feed in nicely to the stuff you just talked about. So one is that you have Mixpanel listed here as self-serve analytics, which I noticed you don't have next to BI. So maybe you could share a little bit more about like what that means. Say you're doing a common workflow, like building a funnel or creating cohorts, and how Mixpanel can make it simple in comparison to the workflow you described before.
Yeah, so in order to answer a question with business intelligence, you need to basically you need to anticipate what the question is going to be so that you can have the data structured in the data warehouse correctly. Because what business intelligence does is it basically loads tables from a data warehouse and then can query those. You use SQL to do the queries. And not a lot of people know SQL. Like typically, like any kind of data scientist, data analyst probably will know some SQL. Data engineers will certainly know some SQL, but your average PM may or may not. And so what typically happens is if you're in a kind of iterative mode of answering questions, it takes a lot of back and forth in order to get to the answers. That's not because business intelligence is bad. It's just because business intelligence wasn't designed to be able to solve that problem, to work in that mode. With self-serve product analytics, we're actually designed from the ground up to be able to operate in that mode. Where so imagine, to use your example with a conversion funnel, like let's say that you're looking at your sign-up flow. And you're seeing like where users kind of fall off during the sign-up flow, and you want to maximize that. And in Mixpanel, you might discover that oh well, at step number 5, for example, if it's like a particularly like involved sign-up flow, we see a lot of drop off there. Let's look at the users who are dropping off and let's compare them to other kinds of users, you know, the population at large, or let's compare these users to users who do complete that step. And let's see what else is different about it. That might start to lead you to answers about, you know, what you might do to get that conversion rate to go up. And that's what, you know, that's what product analytics is all about. That all in Mixpanel, that's a very interactive thing. You never hit a point where you're going to kind of get stuck and have to go to a specialist to pull the data and structure it correctly for you, because Mixpanel queries the data for you and has the UI that's made for answering those questions specifically.
Yep, that's great. And I think one thing to add on is a lot of analysts use Mixpanel as well, right? So it's not just
Totally.
a tool for the product team. It's like you got this analogy that someone said to me once, like you could walk to LA, but why wouldn't you just fly? And so Mixpanel is kind of like that in certain ways, of 3 clicks and you're done versus no pre-computation versus you got to do all these things, all these steps.
Right. Yeah. Like if you want to know, if you want awareness of what's going on in the business and how you're doing against your goals, you're going to want to go to your business intelligence tool. If you're wanting to answer questions about your users and what's happening, no matter what role you have in the company, Self-Serve Product Analytics is going to be the right tool for you.
Yep. Okay. Question from the audience. Our company has a lot of data, to not disclose what company, but hundreds of millions of events a day we collect. Can Mixpanel support this with cloud import, and is there an upper limit?
Yeah, absolutely we can. We have customers that are using cloud import at very massive scale. And so there's no upper limit on the amount of data that we can handle.
Perfect. Okay. Which data lakes and warehouses does Mixpanel support for cloud import?
Yeah, so we support right now Amazon S3 and then Google Cloud Storage. If you're using a data warehouse like Snowflake, for example, or Redshift or BigQuery, then it's just a simple matter of exporting the data, which it's easy to do in all those tools to one of those buckets.
Okay, great. Then it looks like we're about through all the audience questions, but for those of you tuning in, if you're watching this on demand after the fact, just feel free to drop them in the feed and then we'll come in and answer them then. Adam, I think you wrote a blog post on this topic as well for folks who want to read. Can you tell us where people can find that and what it's about?
Yeah, I mean, so people can find that on Mixpanel blog, and you know, I think if you do a Google search for Mixpanel Product Analytics BI, you'll probably be able to find it. And you know, it covers a lot of the same kinds of topics that we've been talking about.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time, Adam, and for the audience. Sincerely hope you found this useful. Tune in again soon. Bye.